So our last content in Unit 1 is an overview about fashion in the global marketplace. So we're going to learn a little bit more about the ideas that we heard about in the last activity. We're going to be talking about haute couture, we're going to be talking about ready-to-wear, and we're going to be talking about mass production. So each of these design levels helps us understand how apparel is produced. So let's go for it. So fashion industry levels, there are 3. So you need to know that. And if you looked at a garment, if you were in the industry, you could tell the nuances of that garment based on the design, the silhouette, the fabrication, the production and techniques used, or whether the garment had been manufactured in Paris or Mumbai. So in the past, people used to know that couture was always produced in Paris and ready-to-wear was in New York and London. But today with globalization, the distinction is not as clear. There's a melding of international designers going from one country to the next, importing fabrications from all around the world. And there are global manufacturing facilities in both developed and developing countries. So fashion, in a sense, has lost its borders, as have the fashion industry levels, haute couture, ready-to-wear, and mass production. It's a little bit more muddy. So today, Paris produces both couture and ready-to-wear. One can't really discuss fashion in terms of a specific designer and country. A lot of countries are involved in the production and design and manufacturing of a single garment. So, we've examined the 3 industry levels. Remember, they're primary, secondary, and tertiary market. And remember that the secondary market consists of both fashion producers and distribution. These people are manufacturers, contractors, etc. You also learned about the styling and price categories. So you learned that there's a correlation between styling, fabrication, production methods, and price point. All of these things fit together. So it's really important that you understand the characteristics of different levels of designs because you'll need them to relate to designers and when we're talking about fashion design centers throughout the world. So let's look at a diagram. This just kind of reviews what we just did in the last unit. So the secondary market is referred to as industry level. Fashion producers in this market include manufacturers, wholesalers, contractors, and product development teams. And then there's 2 general levels here. There's mass production and ready-to-wear. So this relates to the quality of the design, fabrication, and the construction of the garment. If it's higher end, it's considered ready-to-wear, and if it's lower end, it's mass production. Remember, couture is that fancy style of garment that is individualized and one of a kind. So, like I said before, the 3 levels are couture, ready-to-wear, and mass production. You are probably most familiar with the names of couture and ready-to-wear designers. These are the designers that we hear about famous people wearing or we see on the runway. So if we're talking about business suits, a haute couture suit costs around $20,000 to $30,000, where a ready-to-wear suit costs about $1,000, and a mass market suit can cost as low as $200. This price point is really important to audience because there are people that can only afford one of those options, and there are people that wouldn't be caught dead in a mass market suit worth only $200. So when a designer is designing, they really need to keep an eye on their audience, and their audience, one of the ways that they distinguish that is price point. So let's start at the top and move down to the bottom. So the couture designer is the fashion innovator. They're the artist and their medium is fabric. Couture designs are generally challenging to wear. You wear them to make a statement, and they are very, very expensive, so you wouldn't want to ruin them. Couture designers know how to create new inventive ideas. They are experts in their craft. They understand principles of design, and they are exceptional at constructing garments. If you want to know what couture is from, it actually is French for sewing. So haute couture is the highest form of this art. So purchasing a couture garment is very different from purchasing any other form of manufactured clothing. You can't go to a store and try one on off the rack to see how it fits your body. Haute couture is built using your individual measurements. And this kind of fashion was born in Paris and then spilled over to other major cities in Europe, such as London and Milan. These houses traditionally dominated fashion, but when the couture influence declined in the 1960s with the London Fashion Revolution, this led way to more ready-to-wear. So, for the first time in history, after the 1960s, fashion was influenced by the street. So, fashion was actually influenced by what people were wearing, not what the designer was creating. But we're lucky in recenter years, that's a good word, couture experienced a revival in the late 80s and early 90s. So, with more and more women in business, designers wanted those clothing dollars, and they knew that these women were prepared to spend on their wardrobes. So we see a huge surge in ready-to-wear companies such as Donna Karan, Armani, Ralph Lauren, Versace. And as the cost of ready-to-wear designers becomes more and more expensive, some women discovered that couture garments weren't that much more costly than a top-end ready-to-wear garment. So famous couture names like Yves Saint Laurent, Gianfranco De Ferro at Dior, and Christian Lacroix were comparatively affordable for these women. So the couture boom in the 90s gave rise for conglomerates to take over. So cosmetic company Charles of the Ritz purchased Yves Saint Laurent, and this new status meant that fashion houses continued to have a high profile. So fashion houses either made it or they didn't. One example of turning around a declining fashion house is Karl Lagerfeld. Chanel was a failing company at the beginning of Karl Lagerfeld's stint there. It was once famous and once boosting, but it really had a lull. And Karl Lagerfeld revitalized all of its subsidiaries. So it boosted the perfume, the cosmetic, the jewelry, the handbags, the accessory, the hosiery, and most importantly, the designer jeans. So a couture house, like the House of Chanel, has gone through some changes over past years, but they are still alive and well. So there is a famous social scientist called Waddell, and in 2004 he said, couture has been so tied up in the branding game that it's difficult to tell how many of the houses operate today in the traditional way. So many couture houses such as Dior, Givenchy, and Versace use their couture collections to highlight their other products, such as accessories and perfume. As well, many of these design houses double dip and design ready-to-wear lines as well. So it gets a little bit confusing, but couture is the top end of garment production. So let's move to ready-to-wear. Ready-to-wear is the second design level of this industry. This design level is also inventive and original in its idea, but it relies on couture to soften the market and make the customer aware and comfortable with new concepts. So ready-to-wear translates these ridiculous ideas in couture and produces a marketable, less costly product. So in ready-to-wear, you select a garment off the rack, try it on, and discard what you don't fit or don't like. So the issue with ready-to-wear is that the outlet has to keep a large stock of items from which the customer can make an appropriate choice. But if these things are expensive, that is a problem for the retailer. If you have a ready-to-wear dress, but you need to keep it in size 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, that's really, really costly for you. So there is a balance, and this is where we see some mass production, which we'll talk about in a minute. But ready-to-wear, at the end of the day, is the major area where designers operate. And just to give you a little bit of background, ready-to-wear hasn't always existed. it kind of morphed out of the mass production of uniforms in World War I. So when the First World War happened, manufacturers had to come up with new methods of mass production, and they needed to produce uniforms for millions of soldiers. They've never had to do that before. So trench coats and battle dresses are examples of clothing that moved from being built by a tailor, so one guy in a shop, to being mass produced. And when the invention of the sewing machine during the 19th century came about, this led to the type of mass production that produced garments, referred to as ready-mades. So, as a result, we get this post-war clothing industry that was modernized and ready to establish new ready-to-wear markets through the exporting of products. And New York was at the forefront of that. A name that you may have heard of is Claire McCardell. She was super instrumental in developing the American look and revolutionizing women's wear in terms of design and production. So she believed that fashion should be functional, stylish, practical, and comfortable. And she also believed that stylish and fashionable clothing should be produced within the constraints and limitations of mass production. So she really, really believed that women should be able to be stylish at the same time as being practical and comfortable, and that could be done for less money through mass production. She was named one of the most 100 important Americans of the 20th century, and she's been dubbed America's finest designer. So if you have any history projects that you have to do, Claire McCardell might be an interesting person to look into a little bit more. So moving past the war, there was a fashion revolution in London during the 1960s that further enhanced ready-to-wear. The 60s, London gave Paris a run for its money. Ready-to-wear designers such as Mary Quant focused on their design attention to the young adult. So this market had more disposable income than ever before, and it was the first time in history where moms tried to emulate their daughters in terms of dress and appearance. Usually it was the other way around. So finishing off, ready-to-wear is a quality product, more quality than mass production, but less quality than couture. The quality is sometimes problematic for ready-to-wear design companies because their output volume is much smaller, so sometimes manufacturers refuse ready-to-wear orders because they're too costly. So they must enlist smaller, less equipped outwork manufacturers, and this is where we see them going to developing nations. So, finishing it off with mass market. Several seasons after couture has introduced a new idea, designers will work in the mass production level to reinterpret and copy design ideas from couture and ready-to-wear for the average Joe. So, manufacturers involved in mass production are highly mechanized. So, they have robots and things making clothes, and they have huge employee numbers and work in assembly lines. So they will take a concept from ready to wear, and then they will change little pieces of it. They might change the pattern, the sizing, the sewing together, the lay plan, and the construction techniques in mass production are the minimal possible while meeting the quality standards. So they won't go above and beyond. They will just do the bare minimum. So they can do it as fast and as cheap as possible. So, with mass production, you probably don't know this, but most designers in the industry work in a mass production capacity. So even if they're couture and ready to wear, they might work with a manufacturer to produce clothing for a specific brand or store label. So some designers create original designs for a mass production company, and some designers adapt or reinterpret designs to allow manufacturers to produce a similar looking product for much, much, much less. So these designers are sometimes called stylists. The important thing with mass production is that costs are cut by eliminating details in the design and choosing less expensive fabrications, but this also means the garment is less durable and of less quality. So, couture, ready to wear, mass production, these are the terms that you need to understand moving on to finish the Unit 1 summative.